big Merry Christmas from Humza Yousaf to all of us. After resigning as the First Minister earlier this year, he's now announced that he will not run again when his term expires in 2026. And to celebrate this, I'm going to go through my Humza folder to reminisce over some of his greatest hits. Let's begin with Humza being sworn in as a Member of Parliament while wearing traditional Pakistani dress and reciting an oath in Urdu.
मैं Humza Yousaf ईमानदारी और सच्ची दिल से ये ऐलान करता हूँ.
Woo Safid fam logan se nafarta karta hai. What? Am I being racist by mocking him? As racist as these clips from the mainstream that are all deemed to be acceptable?
First things first, where's your shitter? I've got a turtle head poking out.
Now you take the hoose.
The moose?
The hoose! The hoose!
Is this right?
Ah! Turn off the noozle!
The noodles? What noodles?
The noozle at the end of the hoose!
Calm down, get a grip people, we're all just having a wee laugh here. But keep in mind, this is how he chose to be sworn in, yet repeatedly tells us that he's as Scottish as they come, and if you cut him open, he bleeds Scottish.
I'm about as Scottish as they come. Born in Scotland, raised in Scotland, educated in Scotland. You cut me open and I'm about as Scottish as you come.
Humza's probably most known for the speech that he made in Parliament during what was branded as an anti-racism debate, but was simply a struggle session where white members of the Parliament would self-flagellate while the non-whites put on an act of victimhood as they chastised the native population.
When the most senior positions in Scotland are filled almost exclusively by those who are white. The Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white.
His 10-minute performance was rightly ridiculed across the world as he scolded the Scots for being too white. He complained that almost every senior position in Scotland was held by someone who was white, and he went on to spit that word white with disgust no fewer than 18 times. His speech failed to mention that the first conviction for a racially motivated murder in Scotland was a group of Pakistani men who murdered a white child, Chris Donald, in 2004. What was their motivation? A completely unrelated event where they were denied entry to a nightclub. I've covered this in another video. Humza has said over the years that he had sympathy for the family of Chris Donald and that he marched in remembrance of Chris. However, his failing to mention that type of racism in his speech on anti-racism in Parliament suggests to me that there was no sincerity to his words of sympathy. He would sometimes boast in the media that he was the first Muslim leader of a Western democracy, and then in the next breath would say that our politics is infested with Islamophobia. Mate, if that was the case, then you wouldn't have made it anywhere near Parliament. What a race-baiting, grifting con man. Now let's pause for a moment from all the rage to acknowledge that Humza did have career aspirations outside of politics, including as a comedian stuntman. I managed to secure a copy of his leaked audition tape for MTV's Jackass.
Hi, I'm
Humza Yousaf.
Welcome to Jackass.
All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. This famous line from Orwell's Animal Farm must have been taken by Humza to be a commandment for life, a rule for leading, rather than as a warning that those leaders who shout most loudly about equality and social justice are often the ones who can end up being the most tyrannical and abusive of their power. One example of that being when he and his wife were told that there was no space for their child at their preferred nursery and that they'd have to join a waiting list like everybody else. Not content with being treated the same as everyone else, Mr. and Mrs. Yousaf tried to sue the nursery, accusing the staff of racism and dragging them through 2 years of legal hell before eventually dropping the case. Again, he tried to play the victim card when he resigned as the First Minister earlier this year, looking to gain sympathy through emotionally manipulating the public, telling us that he was so terrified that he might have to flee from Scotland.
I don't know whether the future for me and my wife and my 3 children is going to be here in Scotland or the United Kingdom, or indeed in Europe and the West, because I have for some time really worried about the rise of Islamophobia.
Yet only a few months later, it was clear that he wasn't all that terrified as he freely walked around in public while launching his own Pakistani-themed tartan.
I'm absolutely delighted to have officially registered the Yousaf tartan. I hope you like it as much as I do. The green there to represent Pakistan, my grandparents' home.
Women might feel rightly aggrieved by the hypocrisy of Humza Yousaf. In 2023, he was all over social media with platitudes about he'll advance women's rights, duping them into supporting him. Yet not too long after that, he was one of the main proponents of introducing new hate crime laws, which could see you jailed for making a joke or comment about one of several minority groups, even if you make the comment in the privacy of your own home. All it takes is for one person to feel offended, and that could be the grounds for a case against you. If a woman states that men cannot be women, or men cannot give birth, then someone could take offence at that and demand that woman is investigated. Thank you very much, Humza. You've totally got women's backs. Some would argue that Humza was motivated to push this law due to his own personal battle with J.K. Rowling. He took great offence to her words, so rather than just accept that like a man, he pushed for new laws that could see her jailed. What a ridiculous concept these hate crime laws are, attempting to eradicate the concept of hate. Plenty of people hate me, that's their right. These laws allow Humza to criticise whoever he wants to, yet also enables him to have his own critics prosecuted, using the police as his own personal army to arrest anyone who upsets Humza's fragile ego. Thought crime is only a few steps away. If Humza thinks you've had a forbidden thought, then you are guilty. I saw one journalist who challenged him on his hate crime laws, pointing out that this law could apply to his own comments, and he deflected by suggesting that only people who are part of the far right found his white comments to be hateful.
How do you feel about that?
So a couple of points to make. The description of those who reference that speech as hatred, I've not seen anybody who has described it in that way that isn't, frankly, part of the far right.
Now, is that so, Humza? This is the usual trick of these deceitful tyrants. I voted left most of my life, and as soon as I started to question the Australian Labour Party, they labelled me as far right. There was no transition to calling me a centrist or a conservative or moderately right-wing. No, if you disagree with them, then you are the scary bad word. And just after far right, they'll call you a Nazi. Some of you know that I was back in Scotland recently visiting friends and family, and while I was there, I was pleasantly surprised to find some who in the past were massive SNP flag wavers were, in their own words, disappointed in Humza with his white stunt. Are they all far right now too? Here he is just casually calling the entire Conservative Party institutionally Islamophobic.
So the Conservative Party, in my mind, undoubtedly is institutionally Islamophobic.
Humza's political strategy: just throw derogatory labels at people to frighten them into voting for you. Even his announcement letter yesterday was filled with a mix of bragging, victimhood, and emotional manipulation. There is no way the son of immigrants could have ever dreamt of being the leader of his country when he was a boy. People who looked like me and who were of my faith simply were not represented on the front benches in politics anywhere in the UK. This is him playing on his apparent humble beginnings. What he fails to mention is that his father was a very well-off tribal leader from Pakistan, and that young Humza went to one of the most expensive private schools in Scotland, followed by the prestigious Glasgow University. There was no humble beginning for Humza Yousaf. He was a boy of extreme privilege who had way more opportunities handed to him than most Scottish people. It is often said that you cannot be what you cannot see. I hope by becoming the first minister of colour and the first Muslim leader of a Western democratic nation, I have sent a clear message to every young person of any background who aspires to get involved in public service that you do belong and are just as deserving of opportunity as anyone else. Nah, you've nothing in common with anyone who grew up on a council estate. They don't look at you and think, yeah, I can be just like Humza. During my time in government, including as First Minister, I have always been driven by my desire to improve the lives of the poorest and most vulnerable in our society. It is a principle that will guide me in whatever I do next. I'm helping the poorest and most vulnerable. Empty platitudes, emotional manipulation. Just like many of the SNP and Scottish Labour politicians who corresponded with me via email earlier this year, they are completely out of touch with the lives of the people who grew up where I came from. They all live in some fantasy of being the saviours of the poor and the downtrodden, but in reality, all they ever do is push perpetual victimhood or endless guilt onto their constituents. If they can convince you that you fit one of those two categories, then they have you controlled. And he ends on, I hope that throughout it all I was able to treat people with kindness, courtesy and respect. No, Humza, you didn't, because you berated 95% of the population because of their skin colour, something they are born with. And you chose not to judge them on merit, not on their deeds. Judging someone on their deeds, a point you yourself made to Parliament in your typical hypocritical and virtuous fashion, is you took your applause at the end of the anti-racism guilt lecturing struggle session.
Let us be judged by our deeds, Presiding Officer. Our deeds, not just our words. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this walk down memory lane, but with so many bangers from Humza throughout his political career, I must have forgotten a few hilarious moments. And with him still in Parliament until 2026, I'm sure we're going to have more to come. Please let me know what I missed in the comments below.